So Frank, you and I have been kind of talking about this latest settlement.
Right.
And so I want to go over some things that I think are critical that you should know as president of the San Diego MLS. And this is the word you're going to take out to a lot of realtors, right? Because you're going to be talking to lots of folks about this. So
let's do it. What's the date? So people know out there, it's Tuesday, March 19th, 2024.
yeah, so there was
So a lot of things happened last week.
so Friday, the 15th, Ides of March, March 15th, right? Julius Caesar. What happened is there's a settlement on these cases. Now, you and I have been talking about these cases. We've been going out to caravans across San Diego County. We've been doing videos, doing webinars, talking to people about these cases. The big case was Sitzer Burnett in Missouri. We talked about Merrill. We talked about MLS PIN. These are all cases that revolve around the MLS and an offer of compensation. And what really started to get people's attention is in the Merrill case, there was a judgment, $5 billion. $5 billion, right? And so, and NAR is one of the defendants in the case. And so there was this settlement, and the settlement involves that case and also the case in Illinois, and it'll probably go nationwide. But here's the first thing to know as you start to hear that the real estate industry is changing, and it's a proposed settlement, right? It's proposed. The judge hasn't accepted it yet, and there'll be other entities looking at this. And so this is a proposed settlement. And like so many things on the internet, you got a lot of people who are not always right, but never in doubt.
Right.
Not always right, but never in doubt. They haven't read the 108-page proposed settlement.
And you have.
And I've read it a number of times. I've had discussions with people about it. And to me, it's a little bit confusing. I don't understand certain things. And so I mentioned the other day, you ever watch, you're an ex-cop, right? You ever watch Dragnet?
Of course.
Joe Friday?
Right.
The facts, ma'am.
Just the
facts. And so, yeah, people will make up stories and they got their own opinion and they want it.
Right.
But so right now, all we can talk about are the things we know. And even the things we think we know, we might not know. Okay, so what do we know? Number one, it's proposed.
Right.
It's not official yet. It's a proposed settlement. What is it? What is this? What are the terms of the settlement? 108 pages. Well, if you really want to get to the meat of it, download a copy of the proposed settlement.
Where can we find that?
You can find it on thedataadvocate.com, and we're going to put it up on the MLS site, right? So SDMLS.com, we're going to put it up there. We'll also post it inside Paragon.
Perfect.
Right? And so get a copy of that, and then go to paragraph 58H. 58H.
Do we have a copy of that here?
And in my office, we got a copy. So if you go to paragraph
58,
H58, you just start reading it,
right,
and you'll start to see this. Now,
right,
one of the amount, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount that NAR agreed to pay, $418 million. Now remember, Keller Williams settled at $75 million. Anywhere settled at $83 million. RE/MAX settled at $55 million. The National Association of Realtors in this proposed settlement said they would pay $418 million. It's over 4 years. They're not going to pay it all at once.
To cover almost over 1 million agents.
And so
nationwide.
Who gets covered? Well, a lot of agents didn't even think that they were liable. But the fact is that this thing started to work itself through. Probably people, agents, brokers could have been liable. So who does it cover? The first thing is $418 million. Who then is going to be relieved of liability from these cases that are going after the offer of compensation? And the answer is, first, MLSs that are realtor MLSs, realtor associations, and then the members of those MLSs and those associations. So $418 million, and NAR is going to be off the hook for that, and so are associations, and so are MLSs. So that's a big thing. That's a positive.
So a week ago, they were saying they can come after not only the big companies, but the smaller brokerages and even the teams. So that's all settled?
For most people.
Okay.
Now, who's not covered?
Who's not covered?
Yeah.
There's two companies.
Brokerage firms that do more than $2 billion. That's a number of firms. So those firms that do more than $2 billion are not covered, but they can opt in. And there's a cost, and they have to pay like, I can't remember the number, 25 basis point, a percentage, right? They have to pay, and then they're covered. Well, that comes out to, based on the number of agents these big companies have, millions of dollars. Right. But they can, for millions of dollars, they can opt into the settlement. And then there are these MLSs that are not realtor MLSs. And there's, 8, 7, 8 of these big MLSs, and they have to pay like $1 a subscriber. And they can opt in. That's millions of dollars for them.
Got it.
So who's covered? NAR, associations and MLSs that are realtor MLSs, and who's not covered? Big companies that do more than $2 billion. And I can't remember the year. It was 2022 or 2023. We can look that up, or you can go read the document. And those are, so it's important. Not everybody's covered,
right,
in this settlement. Some entities, a lot of people are, but some of them are not.
So what should the individual agent be working on? The buyer's agent. Well, so I'm a buyer's agent. What should I be thinking right now?
So one of the things that this does is it changes the MLS. Now, the MLS is an offer of compensation.
Correct.
The MLS will no longer be an offer of compensation. So that's a big change. You won't be able to be assured that you're going to be able to earn that position, not through the MLS. You can still earn compensation through the listing broker.
Mm-hmm.
They might be willing to share some of their commission with you outside the MLS. The seller might be willing to pay you outside the MLS. So the MLS will not be an offer of compensation any longer. You must have a contract with the buyer before you show the buyer the property, any property. That's a big change.
Right.
So you ask, if you're a real estate agent today, what can you do? You need to learn how to make the value proposition around signing a buyer contract.
Right.
Now, we know that the National Association of Realtors is offering free ABR, accredited buyer representative courses. And so, go to the NAR website, nar.realtor, and look for the free buyer representation course. Take those courses. You can take them online. They got a number of different ways you can take them. Learn how to convince a buyer they should sign a contract with you, because this is going to be required. Right. This settlement's going to require. Now, we also were at CAR a couple of weeks ago, California Association of Realtors.
Right.
CAR, the directors passed a motion for CAR to sponsor legislation mandating the use of buyer broker contracts. So the number one thing you can do for yourself if you're listening to Selling Real Estate today,
learn the buyer broker agreement and how to apply it. Learn what your value is.
Learn what your value is.
And it also has a spot where I think they give like 179 reasons, a list of what your value is. The buyer's agent representing the buyer is responsible for not only a fiduciary responsibility. So that means no matter what you're going to get paid, you got to represent him. It's above and beyond what you're doing for yourself. That's what fiduciary is. You have to treat his money. And it doesn't matter what you're getting. He comes first, basically.
He or she.
Yeah, you're right. Or whatever.
Yeah, right. So you have your client.
Your client. Yeah, let's go with your client. And so a lot of people never did that, including me. You don't want to have a buyer broker agreement because no one wants to sign a contract when you first meet them. So that's going to be the challenge. No matter what you learn from all these great brokerages, it's still difficult to convince in the real scenarios, not the ones that are in offices, like here's how you do it. A lot of things sounds great, but then in the real world, the way it is, the way it should be. I come up to you and I go, hey, let's go look at this house. I'm going to be specific on the address even. And this is what I want you to pay me. This is what, and if he doesn't pay us, so I want 2.5, let's say I negotiate a number. Mine happens to be 2.5% of the sales price, right? That's what you have to offer him. What if he says, I don't want to do that?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody's going to be required to do it. So if everybody's required to do it, it makes it much easier.
Good. That's the perfect point. What would happen is if I said, Saul, I need you to sign this buyer broker before you show everything. The listing agent has their contract. The buying agent has to have his contract. Under real estate, everything has to be in written. Statute of fraud, everything in real estate has to be written. So we need to, have a contract. I don't want to sign the contract, right? I'm going to go to another agent. Now I go to another agent. That one says you got to sign a contract. So making it mandatory, I think, is great.
Yeah.
Because it does cover you as well. Because a lot of people you take a person out, show them 5 or 6 or 7 houses, you don't have a contract, and they go, oh yeah, my brother-in-law did the deal, and thanks for your help for driving me around for 5 months.
Yeah, so it has to be, you're going to have to, this settlement's going to require a contract, and we know that California's trying to pass, the CAR is going to
Make it
sponsor to make it legislatively mandatory, right? So that's the direction it's headed. So you want to do something for yourself? Learn how to use the buyer-broker agreement. So if you're from California, California Association of Realtors, great organization, do a great job in creating these forms to protect you. Learn how to use those forms. Now, in that buyer-broker agreement, you have to specify how much you're going to charge. That's part of the settlement. So it can't be whatever the seller is willing to pay me, whatever the listing agent's, no, it's not good enough. It has to be a specific amount. So you have to decide. Now, what what the plaintiffs and the plaintiff's attorneys agree, and probably the DOJ, is that this is going to encourage new compensation models. And so while one way to be compensated is a percentage of the sale price, another way might be by the hour, right?
Flat rate.
Another way might be a flat rate. And so you have to have this, number one, you have to have a contract. Number two, it has to specify how much you're going to charge. Number three, if in fact,
options.
It's going to give and so you might want, as a real estate practitioner, what can you do? You can start to think about different ways to charge customers. Now, you can't do this if you're not a broker, right? And you got to check with your broker and find out. But today, what I would be thinking of is what are the different ways in which, and I had to live through this in the 80s, what are the different ways in which I can charge someone? I could charge them by the hour. I could charge them a flat fee. I could charge them a percentage.
You charge them by the result.
I could charge them by the result. I actually think that that's one that's coming. Right? Where we can start to figure out what the buyer is willing to pay, what the property is actually worth.
Right.
And that the person representing the buyer, the closer they get to that number, the more they get paid. Right? So there's a number of ways. That's part of what people are kind of thinking. People that are pushing this on the industry is more creative ways to create these newer methods of compensation, because another factor here is certain people think that commissions are too high. Now, you and I can argue for or against this all day long, but it doesn't matter what we think, right? What matters is that people believe that real estate commissions are too high and that real estate commissions should go down, and that what is keeping them high is the structure of MLS.
Right.
And the fact that the MLS is an offer of compensation. So the big piece is to remove the offer of compensation from the MLS.
Why join the MLS then?
Because an MLS creates a marketplace. An MLS actually polices the data. Right. And the MLS, there's a lot of benefits to MLS. Well, we happen to use the vendor Paragon, Paragon Connect, offered by ICE.
Right.
But what happens is all the data is aggregated, all the data is policed, all the data is disseminated, and that's where real value is. Now, before this proposed settlement, if it becomes in fact a settlement, the underpinning of MLS was the offer of compensation.
Exactly.
Okay, that's going
guaranteed. The buyer gets guaranteed. All you got to do is take them there.
Yeah.
And you get guaranteed 2.5%. That was the argument, really, because it's like,
or whatever the percentage might be.
Whatever the percentage, it could be, or whatever the number is.
Whatever the number.
Yeah. I think the biggest, the conflict that I think people had was the buying agent gets paid no matter what.
And this buyer and the seller didn't get to negotiate that part.
He gets to negotiate that part. He just gives it to him so he can just open the door, and if he's a bad agent, he still gets it. If he's a great agent, he still gets it.
Yeah.
But it was never talked about. It was like,
although people would say, yeah, it's in the contract, it's negotiable. The case said it didn't really matter what you think.
right,
The fact is that the people on the buy side, there was no negotiation there, and the seller didn't really get to say to the agent representing them. Agent representing them says, I'm going to take this listing, I'm going to charge, as an example, X%, and half of that's going to go to the person that brings in the buyer. The seller really, according to this case, the seller didn't have the opportunity to say, what if I don't want to pay the agent on the other side? What if I don't want to pay the person who is negotiating against me?
right,
What if I don't want to pay them? They didn't have that opportunity according to this case.
Right.
And of course, you and I know that the seller being able to offer a commission to the agent on the other side is a method to help a seller market their property
right,
for years.
right,
I mean, I remember seeing years ago listings, seeing it's market dependent. But I remember in certain buyers markets where sellers were offering bonuses to people who brought in.
right. Close before July.
Don't do it, then you're going to get, right? So offering compensation to somebody to bring you a buyer
to buyer
faster,
Right.
more qualified, that was an advantage to the seller. Or at least it was always seen as an advantage. And so but that's not being taken away from sellers.
Right,
Sellers can still offer compensation. They can't offer it through the MLS.
Right.
That's the change.
or the purchase agreement.
Right? And now the purchase agreement, that's another story. And it can be done through the purchase agreement. In the past, you never wanted to do that.
Right.
But part of the negotiation here is, and this is, in my mind, this is going to create some conflicts.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. There's a conflict.
It is. But so first of all, the buyer has to sign a contract saying how much they're going to compensate the agent. Buyer says, but I don't have any money.
Right,
The buyer's agent says, well, that's okay. We're going to ask the seller for it.
right,
Because remember, or we're going to ask the seller's agent for it. We're going to ask it in the contract. We're going to say that you're going to offer so much money to buy this property and you want the seller to pay my compensation.
right.
So it's not out of pocket.
You know, you can look at it like this. That's how commercial business is done. Right?
Yeah.
Commercial deals.
Yeah.
You don't have a mixing. You have a letter of intent, and you need to talk to the seller. How much are you going to pay me? I'm going to bring you a buyer, and they often say the buyer has to pay you. So then the agent deals with the commercial guy. Yeah, goes, I need some money.
So we know that the seller can pay compensation.
Right.
How do you ask the seller for that?
Right.
You got to do it in the contract.
Right.
You're going to have to say, hey, now here's the conflict though for me. When you present an offer to a seller and you say, as an example, $500,000, we offer $500,000 on this property. And you, the seller, have to pay the commission to the agent representing the buyer. Some sellers might say, I read I didn't have to pay the commission to the buyer. I heard it was on the news the other day that I don't have to pay the agent. So I'll accept the offer for $500,000, but I'm not paying the buyer's agent. Or they might say, you might offer $450,000. I'll accept the $450,000, but I don't want to pay the buyer's agent. Or I'll pay the buyer's agent, but I want $520,000.
Gotcha.
There's now a conflict between price and commission.
Got it. So when the house sells at the end, the appraised value will be false.
Well, so that's a whole other issue of financing this. And so what's the best way for a seller to look at it? The net. Right? Think about it. I'm going to look at how much do I net. These different offers come in. One wants me to pay the commission. The other doesn't want me to pay I'm going to look
at the highest and best offer.
I want to look at the net. So what does that really solve for the buyer? And there is now this conflict between price, value per appraisal, and compensation.
Oh, there's a lot to go over, Saul. A lot to go over. Let's cut it from here because there's so many issues in that. We went kind of a few different places.
Well, so here's
the key of this video is to give what to the
there is a proposed settlement. Number one,
proposed settlement.
It's $418 million. Doesn't cover everybody.
Gotcha.
Who doesn't it cover? Non-realtor MLSs and brokers who have more than $2 billion in transactions last year, right? And you have to have a written contract, and it has to state a specific amount. And those are the big issues. And the reason you and I are talking about this, Frank, is every time we talk about it, we're going to come up with new thoughts.
I know.
Right?
Unbelievable.
And so just, kind of stay tuned, because every time I talk about this with someone, I get new ideas.
Right.
And it's not set in stone yet. And best practices are not going to be determined until this has been, but the forms haven't even been created yet.
Right. So every transaction, if you're on one right now, just do it like you normally do it.
And pay attention. And learn how to get buyer broker contract signed.
Yeah, watch these videos, because we are going to be at the top of the information chain, food chain. We're going to get information directly from NAR, and all the MLSs that you talk to nationwide, because I know, Saul, you're out there talking to everyone. Everyone's talking to you. Appreciate the time. Let's continue this.
Yep, we got it.
Thank you.